I just wanted to say thank you all for this. I'm very, very excited to be here. So excited, I'm literally wearing my wedding suit. Yeah. But really the reason is the other one had a hole in it. And one of the moms from the book, Susan, who's sort of like my second mom, was like, no one's gonna notice that there's a hole in it. You're the only person who's gonna notice. And I was like, but I will know. And that's the most important thing. But thank you all so much. Thank you to HRC for this honor. I still don't know if it's like fully sunk in. Because to be honest, I've wanted this for so long because I know how much it means to queer journalists to have their voices lifted up. And I also know how much it means to trans kids to have their stories lifted up right now. For those who blacked out during what Lisa said, I spent a year traveling the country to profile trans kids in 7 different states. We'll see if I can do this in order. South Dakota, drop me a beat, Alabama, West Virginia, Texas, Illinois, Florida, and California. I did it. I don't normally get it right in right order. Yeah, we're doing it. And really my goal was to show these kids for who they are, profoundly human. Like it wasn't just about showing that they're just kids like all other kids. It was about showing that they're more than just one thing. Like I feel like so often the rhetoric around trans kids and the misinformation is fueled by fear and by a lack of knowledge. So many people speak about trans kids without ever actually speaking to them. And I wanted to give readers a chance to get to know these kids, just as I did for 2.5 weeks. Like it was kind of like a fly on the wall documentary, but in book form. Like whatever these kids and their families did, I would do. If they were having dinner, I would be having dinner. If they went to the homecoming game, I went to the homecoming game. If they were to jump out of an airplane, guess who would have been jumping out of an airplane? Me, which would be terrible because I'm horrified of heights. But you know, you get to see these kids' lives. You get to see how, not just how they live their day, but their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations for this world. You get to know them in such a profound, deep way. And I was so grateful to get to do that because I know as a journalist, you're not really supposed to be friends with the people that you report on. It's kind of a no-no. But I did a no-no in that I fell in love with all these kids. I fell in love with these families. They're like my family now. Like I feel like I have family all across this country in 7 states. It's such a profoundly wonderful feeling. I can't even tell you. If you need a family donated to you, I got them. They're great. Trust me. You'll have moms bugging you to eat several times a day. It's absolutely wonderful. But I hope that the reader, you know, in reading this book, which is called American Teenager, please buy it, falls in love with them too. Because you know, I really wrote this book for the election because my hope is that, you know, I had this like fantastical idea that everyone would read the book and go, discrimination's bad, and then we would all make the right decision. But that's obviously not the way it went, unfortunately. Oops, sorry, I tried. And I'll be honest, I was really depressed for a couple months after the election. I didn't write anything for like 2 months, which is really weird for me. And I could barely get out of bed because I just didn't know how to keep going. Like I didn't know how to keep fighting because I'd been fighting for so long and it just felt like it wasn't working or something wasn't getting through. And I just took it really personally because my heart was broken for these kids. You know, I just didn't know, like, on the day of the election, what did they think? What were they going through? What were they feeling? You know, because I think I'm old enough to have had my heart broken by America many times throughout my life. But these kids, it's like some of them are having their hearts broken for the first time. And that was just really hard. It was hard to deal with. Luckily, I'm in Prozac now, so that's really great. Strongly recommend. Beta blockers also, we stand. Can't speak highly enough. But, you know, part of it is also that my friend, Chris Earshel, who's a fabulous civil rights attorney and will be totally embarrassed that I'm mentioning him during this speech, I interviewed him after the election. And, you know, every time I interview somebody, I always ask at the end of it, what brings you hope right now? What brings you joy? And he said something that I think will always stick with me. He said that, you know, he recognizes that this is a really hard time right now. It's a hard time for a lot of people. It's a hard time for these kids. It's a hard time for him. I imagine a lot of people in this room, like if you're having a hard time right now, there are a lot of people with you, right? But what he told me is that what he has to remember is that he has a job to do. Like he's a lawyer, he fights for people. That's his job. That's how he can contribute. And on those days where everything feels really difficult and it's just too overwhelming, he just has to focus on doing his job. And I just feel very grateful and very privileged to do this work right now, to be able to keep doing my job at a time when trans kids and trans people need advocates. So many trans folks that I know, and not just kids, adults too, feel like they've been abandoned. They feel like this country's really turned their back on them. And I'm gonna try not to cry. Not that I'm against crying, it's just I've been crying a lot recently, and I feel like Ariana Grande promoting Wicked, so I'm done with crying. We're over it. But it's just really hard, and it's really lonely sometimes to feel like everyone's just forgotten about you. But I think I know that I've got to keep doing my job. And I think I always just ask other people, not just in this room, but anyone watching right now, if you happen to be watching this on YouTube 6 months from now, or a year from now, or 30 years from now when we have flying cars, just ask yourself, what's the job that you can do? How can you help? Because so many of these kids have been fighting alone for a really long time, and they know how lonely that is. They know how lonely it is to feel like no one's listening. And I always say that I fight for a future America when all of these things aren't problems anymore, where a book like this never needs to be written, where they look at a book like this and they'll go, wasn't that silly that we used to do those things? Everything's so great now. And I really hope we get there. I pray that we get there one day, and we get there sooner rather than later. These kids need that. But in the meantime, I just know the only way we get there is if we keep fighting. So if you're in this room and you're fighting right now, keep it up. Thank you so much for that. I'm so grateful for you.